Hi, good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight. George Anderson is our presenter for tonight, who's going to be sharing advice and tips on how to get your dream summer body. Yeah, I'm sure there's loads of questions. It's not always kind of what you feel like when you've just given up drinking, but if you have maybe stopped drinking a while ago and now you kind of feel like you've got over the first hurdles and you want to concentrate on getting fitter and healthier, then George is your man to help you get there. So I'll hand you over to George. Oh, before we start as well, if you've got any specific questions about fitness or diet, nutrition-y type things, then write them in the text box at the side and we'll get through as many as we can at the end. All right, hope you enjoy the webinar tonight, and here's George. Thanks, George.
Thanks, Lucy, and yeah, thanks for having me on as well. By the way, thanks for inviting me on to speak to the Soberistas audience. And I did one of these a little while ago as well, probably over a year ago now, actually. And the questions that I had in the last one were really good. I do want to echo what you just said there, Lucy, and encourage people to ask questions. And actually, I just want to kick that off on your the webinar jam that you're watching this through. If you just type in where you are at the moment, so kind of where you are, so your name, where in the world you are, and so I've got a bit of an idea as to kind of who's listening in this evening, and then we'll use the chat on here as well to ask your questions as we go through. I have got a bit of a presentation, and the kind of the working title of it was how to take the stress out of getting in shape for the summer. And Lucy, you kind of alluded there to sort of how to get your sort of your dream body, and I'm going to kind of dive into some of the language around that, as well as some of the practical things that that you can do. And there is no sort of heavy PowerPoint presentation or loads of slides, loads of information to take on board. I want to kind of give you some concepts. I want to give you some things to think about. Although I will be sharing with you some concrete things that you can do. My favourite sort of headline grabber is the 5 foods you should be including each week to make noticeable changes to your body. I mean, who doesn't want that kind of information, right? But I'm going to drill down into that kind of info. So if you have a piece of paper and a pen handy, that's going to be really helpful when we get to that bit. So we've got some people here. We've got Tracy listening from Harrogate, James there in Manchester, Amanda in Kent. So good. So you spread all around the UK. That kind of takes into account the North Midlands and into the South as well. So I'm here in Tame in my office. As you can see, I'm in my kitchen at the moment, which is kind of in a bit of disarray because we're in the middle of extending the house at the moment, and we only moved here back in September. And the reason I share that with you now is because we've always got things. Everybody has things going on in their lives all the time. We're never in a time where it's the perfect time to get in shape and to start making changes to nutrition or stopping drinking alcohol, which, by the way, I stopped drinking myself about 3 years ago now, and never looked back. I can highly recommend sticking with it. And there is no perfect time, and that's a really important point here, because everyone's always going to have lots of different things on. You're going to be busy with work and maybe with kids, and it's just I'll wait until we're past this point. I'll wait until I've got a clear stretch so I can get into it. You have to get on board with this whenever you feel ready to it. And if you're not ready now, that's fine. But I imagine that the reason you're on this webinar this evening because you are kind of thinking at least about making some changes. So I really want to encourage you to embrace some of the ideas and the concepts that I'm going to share with you this evening. And just try them on for size. So you don't have to wholesale change your entire attitude and lifestyle and behaviors overnight. You don't have to do that. In fact, some of the best and most effective ways of making changes to your health and fitness and well-being and the results you get and how you feel is by making small incremental changes so that you feel like you're in control. And that's the key concept I want to keep coming back to, is it's about how you feel. It's not about looking a certain way. It's not about being able to run marathons necessarily. It's about how you feel. And that's going to be very different for all of you. And just going back to what I said about the questions there, once I finish my presentation, I will go in and answer any questions that you guys have. So please do write them down as we're going through the session this evening. And I wrote a post about this today, actually, on one of my Facebook groups, about how important questions are and how we just, as grown-ups, we don't tend to ask enough. But the problem with that, the problem with being kind of a bit reticent with asking questions, is that if there's something that's stopping you, a piece of knowledge that's stopping you from taking action, and you feel like it's a silly question, you feel like, I should know this information, I should have that knowledge, but I don't. If you don't ask the question, and this is the perfect opportunity, by the way, to do that, then you are stuck. You won't take that action, and you cannot progress forwards, or at least it's going to be much, much harder if you just take the risk of being humiliated in public by asking a silly question. That's obviously not going to happen. But man, that's the worst that can happen, right? And the worst case scenario is you get your answer. You get what you need to move forwards, and that's why I want to give you the opportunity this evening, not just to hear kind of my views on what I'm going to talk about, but I want you to ask your questions as well. And they may well be questions about, right, how do I do this? What's the best way to do that? So ask. If if it's a really long answer, then I'm going to put together a series of articles for the Soberistas website. I will put an article together on it, so you can give me some ideas for what to write about, what's important to you. But if it's a short answer that I can point you in the right direction, then that's what I will do. So that's my commitment to you this evening. So first of all, there are 5 things really that I want to talk about this evening, and it's just, I don't know if Lucy sent out the sort of bullet points for what I'm going to cover this evening, but that's pretty much it. So the first thing really is the title of the webinar, which is how to take the stress out of getting in shape for the summer. And the first thing really that question throws out to me is, well, why is it stressful? Why is it stressful thinking about getting in shape? Here we are in March. In the UK, I know there's people from all over the world listening into this evening, but in the UK, we've kind of just moved into spring. The weather's getting a little warmer, the day's getting a little lighter, and we're probably starting to think about the summer, stripping off those winter layers, and thinking, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to be exposing more of myself, more flesh in the coming weeks, or just wrapping up and feeling uncomfortable, and that kind of almost fills us with a bit of dread, thinking that we're going to have to make some big changes to the way we're doing things. Otherwise, we're just going to, obviously keep getting the same results we've got at the moment. And again, I'm guessing that I'm speaking to an audience here who are ready to start making some changes, which is obviously otherwise you wouldn't be here. That's why I'm basing those assumptions on. So the first thing is to think about why that is a stressful thing, and I think it's because when we look at it, we look at maybe how far we have to go until we reach where we think we need to be, or where we think we should be. And this view of where we should be is often distorted by the media, it's distorted by what we're told, it's distorted by maybe old versions of ourselves. If you've been in shape in the past and now you're not, and you're thinking, my God, I need to get back to where I was, where I used to be. But you know what? That's all rubbish. We don't have to live up to any kind of standard. I'm going to come back to that point a little later on when I talk about, well, what is the summer body? What actually does that mean? But one of the major reasons why I think as human beings, we habitually sort of start making some progress, and then we fall back again, and we start making some progress, and then we fall back, and we kind of recede back to where we were. And it's perhaps the specter of this awful, onerous procedure that we have to go through these changes, and it's only going to just end up in turmoil. We're going to end up going back to where we were. It's like it feels quite stressful thinking about that. And one of the major reasons that we have this cyclical nature of get some results and then self-sabotage, get some results, then self-sabotage. I read a book recently called The 12-Week Year, which is a bit of a businessy book, but the authors Brian Moran and Michael Lennington talk about the difference between the chasm of despair and the valley of confidence, and it applies really, really powerfully to weight loss and getting in shape, because you start getting some results, and you've worked really, really hard to get those results, but then you start looking at how much more you have to do before you get to where you want to be, and that's the valley of the chasm of despair. It's like, oh my God, I've got to do this for the rest of my life just to get to this perfect body. It's not worth it. I'll start eating all the donuts again or whatever. So you start thinking about how much further you have to go. Whereas if you can flip that and you can start looking at the valley of confidence, That's where you are now versus or where you were 3 weeks ago, 12 weeks ago, however long you've been making these changes for. But let's say you've made some changes and you've got some results. You look back and you think, my God, look how much I've achieved. Look what I've done in the last few weeks. I'm freaking awesome. And you start building up that confidence that you can do this. Because ultimately, this comes down to a process. It's again, I'll talk about this a little more in a moment, but it's about a process and action, taking action, doing things rather than just thinking about it. So you can't actually control the outcomes. You can't control how much weight you lose. You can't control if you're training for a 10K. You can't control whether you run under an hour or not. All you can control is how often you go out training, how hard you push yourself, what foods you eat, when you get to bed. They're the things you can control, because they're the things that are the actions, the processes that are going to contribute to these results. And hopefully, if you work into a well-formed plan, then yes, those actions will they will result in something that you're actually striving towards. So there was something else I was going to say about that. It's just slipped my mind. I'm sure it'll come back to me. I just one thing as well I'll say on this. I'm actually normally much better off at the beginning of the day. I'm a bit of an early bird, and although I tend to do all my webinars in the evening, I do find that you'll probably have the same thing. You'll have your power time when you're really on fire. And sometimes where you feel like your energy kind of dips a little bit. My energy's super high right now. You might get that, but my mind's going to wander as I go off on tangent and then on to another tangent. So please bear with me whilst I ramble on through this. But the next thing I want to talk about is how come we're not in shape right now? What is it that's actually caused us to be in a situation where we're thinking about it's time to get in shape? And what that means, it doesn't matter what the reasons are, but the point is that something has to change if you're going to get where you are right now. Let's say it's out of shape or not in the shape you want to be in, and you want to get to the point where you are in shape. And that's a completely personal opinion as to what that means. It's entirely down to you, and it's different for you as it is to me, as it is to Lucy, as it is to everybody else. But where you are now, if you're looking at getting in shape for some of them, well, you're doing something now. You've got a selection of habits and behaviors that aren't getting you to where you want to be. So what that means is we need to make some changes, and actually accepting that fact, accepting things need to change. We need to do something differently, which means we need a plan. We need to do something differently. And I will, at the end of this webinar, by the way, I'm going to tell you about something that I have to offer you, which is something that will hopefully kind of guide you through the process of making some changes. It's not going to start until after Easter. It's the 7th of April, which is a Thursday. A couple of weeks' time, so I will tell you about that in a moment. There's nothing to buy or anything like that tonight, but I will send you to a website where you can sign up for more information about it. And when I've put together the kind of the final touches to this program, I'm going to tell you all about it if you're interested in joining me or finding out more about it. It's just come back to me what I was going to say, which is about when I was talking about the chasm of despair and the valley of confidence. I'm currently training for an Ironman triathlon, which is a 2.4 mile swim, followed by a 112-mile bike ride, followed by running a marathon. It's going to take me literally all day to do that. Now, I can run a bit. I've done ultra marathons. I've done lots of marathons, so I'm happy with running. Not so good in the bike, but you got to do is sit down, right, and pedal your feet. I can do that. But swimming. Now, back in September, I got in the pool, and I kid you not, I was doing 2 lengths of the swimming pool before I had to stop. I knew I had to get to a point where I could do 153 lengths, or the equivalent of that, outside in a river in a wetsuit, and then do the bike ride and then do the run. So there was a huge way for me to go, but I really focused on this whole difference between the chasm of despair and the valley of confidence, and every week I would make a little bit of progress, and I look back and I think, my God, just back in September, I could only do 2 lengths. And I kept on doing that. I kept on looking at how far I'd come rather than looking forwards and thinking, flipping heck, okay, I've just swum my first mile. I've got to do almost 3 times that much or 2.5 times that much, and I've got to do it outside. I would have quit by now, frankly, if I had been thinking like that. You cannot afford to think like that, because since September the 28th, when I got in the pool and started swimming, a couple of lengths, I've followed a process. I've been to the pool 3 times a week. I've had one-to-one lessons. I've joined a swimming club, and I've been swimming once a week with a coach. And just last Tuesday, I did my first 3,000-meter non-stop swim in the swimming pool. So there's still a way to go, but now that difference is down to there. It's a tiny, tiny amount of difference that I have between where I am now and where I need to be. And again, I cannot stress how important it is to focus on what you've achieved and how far you've come, rather than thinking about how much further you have to go. So this really does come down to following the process, thinking about what it is that you need to do. And if that's getting fit, if it's losing weight, there are going to be specific things that you need to, or you can do. And this webinar tonight isn't about giving you the ultimate plan. It's not about saying that, okay, this is how many times a week you do exercise. This is exactly what to do. What I want to tell you tonight is that you need to find something. Okay, you need to find some plan, program, and really immerse yourself in the details of that plan. Don't worry too much about the outcome, because you haven't got complete control about that. Focus on what you can control. Control the controllables. And as soon as you accept that, first of all, change has to happen. If you're going to make some change, and you've got to do something, you've got to change something. And secondly, it's going to take some kind of action. And they're the things that you control. And it sounds really simple and really silly almost, but when you realize that, then it really does make a big difference, because all of a sudden you are in control. You are back in the driving seat. The thing with alcohol, and to kind of take that back to basically why we're all here, is that with alcohol you feel like you're being controlled, or you can feel like you're being controlled. And I was the classic. I've been in the fitness game for 13 or so years, and every time when I explain to people that I've stopped drinking, I always feel like I have to then follow that up with, "Oh, I'm not some kind of alcoholic." So, well, I never say you were, but I stopped drinking because I wanted to, and I feel like even though I used to enjoy drink, or so I thought, there was still that controlling issue. There was still that feeling that there was this second thread of conversation going on in my mind with every interaction I was having whilst I was drinking. Even if it was just a couple of drinks, I'd be thinking, where am I getting my next drink from? I've only got half a glass left. I've got time to get to the bar before last orders, and all those things would be running through my mind, and I wasn't even aware of it until I stopped. The point of saying that is that this is about control, and one of the reasons I stopped was because I realized I wanted to embrace life more. I wanted to be in control more, and I imagine that control is something that's probably quite important to you as well. And so when you realize that to achieve anything you want, especially with health, fitness and well-being and nutrition, weight loss, whatever, you are in control of the things that you do. Your habits, your behaviors, your actions. That's where you get complete control. You cannot necessarily control the outcome, but you can control the input. And once more, we will come back to that point a little later on. I'm going to move on to the next point in a second, but great questions so far. And I will come back to those questions at the end, but keep them coming. Keep asking the questions as we come through. Okay, so next thing, why results come from what you add in and not just what you remove. So what is it that most diets tell us to do? So, well, stop eating this, stop eating that, stop doing this. But actually, as soon as you start doing that, you actually end up butting up against it. You start thinking about all the things that you cannot do, and eventually it's like, well, you know what, I'm not going to do that. And it might go on for a while, and you might have the willpower to do it for a while, but then eventually you're just going to stop, and you're going to go back to where you were before. But when you focus on what you can do extra, what you can include, I'm going to give you some specific examples in a moment of some of those things, then you're going to find that you're in control. There are things you can add in. As soon as you start taking things away, I don't know if you've ever read the book The Chimp Paradox, which is all about the little monkey in your mind that tells you, it seems to try to derail your best efforts. It tries to stop you from, I'm going to get up in the morning and I go for a run. You wake up in the morning and the chimp says, oh, it's cold up there, let's just roll over. And your best intentions are gone. Well, as soon as you tell your mind you can't have something, then guess what? That's what you want. You want the thing that you're saying you can't have. So willpower can only take you so far. But you add things in, and then again you get that feeling of control, and you start getting some results, and that gives you the motivation to continue. Great. So, for example, things like adding in a daily walk. Adding in a daily walk is a great way of ticking lots of boxes. First of all, it gives you some fresh air, some exercise. It's very low intensity, so there's not really that many reasons why you wouldn't be able to physically do that. And it's going to allow you that time, that opportunity to sort of be by yourself with your own thoughts, maybe listening to an audio book, maybe just walking along and thinking about, organizing your day, but just getting out for a daily walk, even if it's just for 10 minutes, it's a great way of, again, feeling like you're taking some steps, taking some positive actions there. I'm a big fan of meditation as well. If you find that, let's face it, everyone knows pretty much what to eat. There's some nuances, some specifics, but now most people know that an apple is healthier than a pizza, right? We kind of know that. So we've got the general idea as to what's healthy and what's not. And again, I'll give you some specific foods that I recommend you all add into your diet. But when it comes to sticking with it, one of the reasons we tend not to is because we get overwhelmed and we start getting stressed. And as soon as you get stressed, you come in the house, you've had a stressful day, something happens, and what's the first thing you do? You either shout at somebody, or you grab some food that you know probably isn't on plan. But when you include some meditation, even just 5 to 10 minutes of meditation into your life on a daily basis, that can make a huge difference as well. And it's something I discovered. I've tried for years to try to meditate on a regular basis, and I've never managed to do it. But actually, the simplest way of doing it was just to give myself permission to do it for just 1 minute to begin with. And I would literally stand there first thing in the morning. I'd get up and I'd have some water to drink, and I'd stand there and I'd just count my breaths for like 60 seconds. So 5 breaths in, 5 seconds out, 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out for 1 minute. And then I'd start doing it for 2 minutes, and then 3 minutes. And then eventually I got to a point where I was doing 10 minutes, and I discovered the Headspace app. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but headspace.com is a really good app. It's a free app, and it gives you a sort of 10-day journey into meditation, and it's phenomenal. It's a massively successful app, but it's a great way of just learning how to de-stress, how to declutter your mind and allow yourself that headspace that can help you in all sorts of situations. So when you've got meditation in your life, what you find is that you're better able to cope with stressful situations, and you're better able to make healthier, smarter choices because you have this calmness. And meditation is a great way of doing that. So although it's not nutrition or exercise related, it's a really, really useful tool to have in the toolbox. And if you can find 5 to 10 minutes a day, which it's an investment that's worth making, if you're serious about getting results, then it can really, really improve the quality of the results that you get and how well you can stick with it. You might look at your breakfast, and the thing with breakfast is if you can get something healthy to eat first thing in the morning, and by healthy, my nutrition philosophies are that you should try and avoid sugar. I think that's a pretty obvious one. I also recommend trying to avoid too much wheat, or if any wheat, and gluten in particular. Avoid processed foods. If you can do those 3 things, that's sugar, wheat, and processed foods, then you're kind of onto a really good start there. If you literally just did that, then you've taken a massive step forwards there. So if you look at what you eat for breakfast, if at the moment your breakfast includes any of those 3 things, and let's face it, a lot of breakfast cereal aisles are packed full of all 3 of those, lots of wheat, lots of sugar, lots of processed elements like preservatives, additives, colorings, flavorings, all this kind of nasties. If you can knock them out of your breakfast, so the first thing in the morning, you're having something really nutritious like poached eggs, smoked salmon, spinach, really nutritious vegetables, a green smoothie, for example. I've got a NutriBullet that I use. I'll have a green smoothie some mornings. Or if you want to go down the more sort of traditional cereal line, then go with something like oats and chia seeds. You can soak them overnight in almond milk, because again, dairy's not really such a great thing to be drinking lots of either. So if you're eating oats and chia seeds soaked in almond milk, then you chop up an apple, stick that in the next day, some nuts. So you get those of proteins, those are really healthy fats, and a spoonful of yogurt in there. It's like a bircher muesli, but it's really, really tasty, and it's really filling, and it's packed full of nutrients. So you're trying to get nutrient-rich foods into your body first thing in the morning, and then guess what? You're more likely to stick with those healthy habits throughout the day. I'm a big fan of intermittent fasting as well, so actually skipping breakfast completely, but doing it deliberately. If you miss breakfast because you haven't got time and you're in a rush, then you're likely to grab for something. That's why they say breakfast is the most important meal of the day. If you end up grabbing for something because you're feeling so hungry, you've got to get something to eat, then what happens is you tend to go for the wrong kind of foods. You tend to go for the muffins and the lattes, or they're going to just give you some instant gratification, that instant energy, but then that's going to leave you feeling sluggish half an hour later on, and then that starts to cycle off for the day. So getting that healthy breakfast in first of all, that just means that you're kind of setting the tone. If you're saying to your mind, you know what, I want a health kick, I'm doing this, I'm on it. and the difference that makes to the choices you make further on through the day are, well, they're pretty impressive. And I'm sure you know there's days where you have something healthy to eat first thing, you feel good, you feel like you're on it, and you're in control. Early nights, get to bed early. It doesn't have to be every night, but if 3 nights a week you can get to bed by 10 o'clock at night, which might sound ridiculously early, but imagine how good you will feel. How good do you feel when you've had a great night's sleep? You feel awesome. Well, when you feel awesome, again, you're more inclined to make the better decisions. When you're sleeping, if you're getting enough sleep, then your body has an opportunity to help reduce the buildup of cortisol, the stress hormone in your body, which is one of the #1 fat storage hormones. So you want to look at this from a hormonal perspective. You want to take down this cortisol level. If you can reduce that, and that happens at night when you sleep. If you're not getting enough sleep, then you get this residual cortisol level increases, and you find it very, very hard to lose weight. No matter how many crash diets, calorie-controlled diets, weigh your food diets, points diets you do, if your cortisol levels are through the roof because you're stressed and you're not getting enough sleep to unwind those stress levels and allow your body to recover physically, then you're never going to find it easy to lose weight. Or if you do, again, it's only going to be a short-term thing, because eventually you'll snap and you'll end up going back to where you were. So getting sleep, a decent night's sleep, and if you can, just 3 nights a week, getting to bed by 10 o'clock, and getting 7 or 8 hours sleep in that night, that's going to make a big difference as well. I mentioned green smoothies. I'm going to talk about some of the other things that I recommend, these 5 foods that everyone should have in their diet. I'm going to talk about that shortly, because I want to move on now and talk about goal setting. And I mean, the whole point of this webinar was about getting in shape for the summer, right? And the stress that it can cause, and how to make that stress-free. Well, what about these goals? What is it that getting in shape means to you? And actually, it's not something you can control. Like I said, you can only control the processes, the input. You can't control the output. You can only buy into a principle or a concept that means that you do these things, and there's a good chance that you're going to get this result at the end. But when you set action-oriented goals, you actually look at the processes that are involved, and I'll introduce this idea now, this concept of lead and lag indicators. Because how do you measure your success? I mean, how do you measure your success? In fact, let me ask that as a question. If you want to post up in the chat, how do you measure your success? How do you measure, if you're trying to lose weight, for example? Well, that's an obvious one. It's kind of a leading question there. But how do you know if you're being successful or not? Just pop that in the chat box there. What is it that you do to measure whether or not your plan, your program is being effective? Just pop something in there for me, even if it is just the obvious one. Stand on the scales, which is the pretty obvious one. Well, no one's been forthcoming and sticking anything on there, but I'll tell you what the obvious ones are. You've got stand on the scales, so you can weigh yourself, you can measure yourself, you can take photographs, you can measure your progress. But all these things come after the event. Okay, these are all lag indicators. So they come after you put the input in, and now you're going to measure the output. In business, it's the same. You measure your profits, you measure your revenues, you measure your new customers. All the things we do, we tend to focus on the lag indicators. There we go. So yeah, weigh myself, look in the mirror, measure on the scales. Yeah, they're all the things. They're all the sorts of things that we look at, the lag indicators. But how about this? How about we switch that around and we start measuring, instead of just the lag indicators, how about we also measure the lead indicators? We measure the input. Because often what happens is we follow a plan, and then 3 weeks later we say, oh, the plan's not working. But actually, if we'd measured the lead indicators, which are the things that we do, so those processes, if we'd measured those things and realized that actually we were only doing 50% of the things that we said we were going to do, then maybe the problem isn't with the plan working. Maybe the problem is with the execution. Maybe that's where the problem lies. But you don't know that until you're going to get a feel for it. But until you start measuring those lead indicators, it's difficult to know. So for a weight loss program, you might say, well, here are 10 things that I'm going to do every single day. I'm going to take omega-3 supplements. I'm going to stretch for 10 minutes. I'm going to meditate for 5 minutes. I'm going to get to bed by 10:30 at the absolute latest. I'm going to exercise for at least 10 minutes in the day. I'm going to eat a healthy breakfast. So you come up with these 10 things that you can do, and they are your lead indicators. And then every day, you just tick off those things that you've done. If you haven't done them, you don't tick them off. And at the end of the week or the end of the month, you look at those things and you work out, well, what percentage of those things that I said I was going to do did I actually do? So 10 things, 30 days, 300 things. How many did you do? If you did 80% or more and you're not getting results, then chances are there's a problem with the program. There's a problem with the plan. But if you're not getting results and you're doing under 80%, then maybe it's a problem with the execution, and you need to start looking at that. And again, maybe it's the plan. Maybe the plan's too severe. Maybe it's not right for you. Maybe there's a reason why you're not doing the things that you committed to doing. Maybe all those things are true. But it's important that you can identify whether it's a problem with the execution or a problem with the plan. I think that's an important point, and most people miss that because we're so conditioned to thinking about weighing ourselves and looking at the outcomes of things. And it makes sense to continue measuring those things, but also measuring the inputs as well. So the much talked about 5 foods you should be including each week to make noticeable changes to your body. And I really mean this. And you cannot say, well, these are the only 5 foods that you need to eat, because that's just nonsense. But if you were just going to add 5 foods into your diet, if you weren't taking on any of these things right now, or very little of them, then I would highly recommend that you start, because these are sort of your low-hanging fruit. They're relatively easy to include in your diet, to add in. Take little or no effort, and it goes back to what I said about adding things in rather than just focusing on taking things out. So like even the clean food diet, where you're just eliminating certain foods like wheat and sugar. It's like, well, you can't have that. No wheat, no sugar, no processed foods, no dairy, no fun. That's what it's like, right? You feel like, well, what is there left? Well, actually, there's loads of things left, but let's talk about the things to add in. And number 1 on the list, I've already mentioned it, is omega-3 fish oils. And you can either get this naturally through things like salmon, sardines, pilchards, mackerel. Oily fish are a really good, rich source of omega-3. But if you're not eating enough of that, i.e. Probably 4 or 5 times a week to get enough, then it's worthwhile taking a supplement, a just baseline supplement of 3 grams, 3,000 milligrams of good quality omega-3, not the omega-3, 6, and 9. Because actually we've got plenty of omega-6 in our diets. That we get a lot of that from vegetable oils. So you sort of want to focus on getting the omega-3, and I'll tell you why. Omega-3 is what's known as an anti-inflammatory oil. So your body can't manufacture it; it has to get it from the diet. And so you get if you have an abundance of omega-6 in comparison with omega-3, omega-6 is inflammatory, omega-3 is anti-inflammatory, and one of the precursors to many illnesses, diseases, dysfunctions, gastrointestinal issues, mental issues is an imbalance in omega-3 and omega-6. It's inflammation in the body. Certainly it's the precursor to things like arteriosclerosis, which is a clogging and the narrowing of the arteries. And this is why there's a lot more research coming out at the moment that suggests that, well, actually, high fat, high cholesterol diets, they're not necessarily the things to blame. It's having this inflammation which is caused from lots of omega-6 vegetable oils, sunflower oil, sugars, lots of sugar, high carbohydrate, high other inflammatory foods like that. So carbs are quite inflammatory. So that's other carbs like wheat, potatoes, rice. It's not to say you shouldn't have any of those things, because obviously they're still very healthy. But if you're eating a lot of sugar, then that's going to have that inflammatory response. And if you can cancel some of that out by having omega-3 fish oils, it's like, you say to people, well, if I could just have a magic pill that would make me healthy, this is it. This is it. There is a magic pill. It's called omega-3. It's such an easy thing to do. You can either eat the fish, or you can just take 3 fish oils first thing in the morning. You can get flaxseed oil as well. Flaxseed is another great source of it, but you tend to have a lot more of it. So unless you're vegan, vegetarian, then go with fish oil, because it's the easiest way of getting those essential fatty acids into your system. Okay, the second one is leafy green vegetables. So I mentioned about green smoothies earlier on, and it doesn't really matter how you eat them, but getting leafy green veggies in, because there's an abundance of nutrients in leafy green veggies. So we're talking about spinach and kale, and even things like broccoli, anything that's green. The darker the green, the denser the nutrients. Yeah, you've got to watch out, because a lot of them have kind of quite bitter tastes. But if you're making, here's an unbelievably simple and tasty smoothie recipe. Okay, and if you go over to my email thing that I'll send you the link to shortly, then I'll send you this recipe as well, because it's really simple. Basically, a handful of spinach, pop it into a blender. So I use the old Nutribullet bullet here. So literally in one of these, stick a handful of spinach, half a banana, quite a ripe banana that's got a little bit of sweetness, some coconut oil, which we'll come back to in just a moment because that's one of my other fave foods for health, some ice cubes, a little scoop of almond or peanut butter, and apart from some ice and water, a couple of squares of green and black's 90% dark chocolate. So you think you're going to come on a healthy webinar and be told to eat eat chocolate, but seriously, you put that into a blender, whiz it up for 20 seconds, and that is the most amazing kind of chocolatey, nutty smoothie you're ever going to taste. You will not taste the spinach because it's actually baby spinach in particular. It's quite a mild flavour to it. So you do that, and you are going to have a taste sensation, and you're ticking lots of boxes there for health, especially if you can chuck in those that coconut oil, almond butter, so you get lots of healthy fats and proteins from the almonds as well. So that's a really, really simple recipe to do it. And, you know, who doesn't like chocolate, right? It's not overly sweet. The sweetness comes from the banana. Like I said, get a fairly ripe banana, a half to a whole sort of small to medium-sized banana, and that'll do the trick. Next up, we have got, already mentioned it, coconut oil. And here's a little thing for you. If you Google the healthiest oil on the planet, and of course we know Google is the oracle of all things truthful, so if you Google healthiest oil on the planet, you might be surprised actually that it's not olive oil, it's not fish oils even, it is coconut oil. And one of the reasons it's had such bad press over the years is because it's packed full of saturated fat. But it's the kind of saturated fat that your body is able to use very, very readily for energy. It's called medium chain triglycerides, or MCT oils. And you can actually buy MCT oil in health food stores because it's incredibly healthy. But coconut oil itself has many, many uses. In fact, I'm not even going to go into them. But let's just say it is. You can chuck it in. You can chuck it into smoothies. It's solid at room temperature if you've never come across it before. The clean chocolate. I'm talking about chocolate quite a lot here, but hey, why not? Clean chocolate. Melt 100 grams of coconut oil. Mix in 100 grams of chopped nuts. Stir in 25 grams of cacao or cocoa powder, and just a little squeeze of honey or agave nectar. Put that into a Tupperware container in the freezer for half an hour. Turn it out. Chop it up. Clean chocolate. I kid you not. It's unbelievable. It's really creamy. You can't really keep it out of the freezer too long because the reason it's solid is because of the coconut oil, and that melts when it's in your sweaty pores. But if you keep it in the fridge or the freezer, then you can. It's brilliant. The problem is it tastes too good, which I think that slogan's been taken. I think I might have been crunching like cornflakes a while back, but it really does. It's amazing. So you got to kind of hide it from the kids because they tend to like that stuff as well. But coconut oil is an amazing oil to cook with, to fry with, to bake with, to roast with. Use it in your cooking, use it in your smoothies. I'm not so keen on it with eggs, if I'm scrambling eggs, but with a steak, it's like a totally tropical taste. You fry a steak up in coconut oil, it's unbelievable. It's like you might as well be there in the Caribbean. So that's the next one. Again, I've already mentioned these little bad boys, chia seeds. Tiny little seeds, look like poppy seeds. But they've only actually been legal to buy in the UK for the last probably 7 years or so. And prior to that, you could get them, but they had to be a part of a bread mix. Right? You couldn't just buy them from a healthy store. Now you can. It's only because the food safety people were a little bit unsure about kind of how to classify them. But they've been around for a long, long time, and they're perfectly safe and healthy. Obviously, very, very healthy. Again, packed with omega-3, another great source of omega-3, loads of protein, and when you soak them in water, they sort of swell up. That's why I like putting them in with my oats and soaking them overnight in almond milk or even just plain old water. They soak up loads of the fluids there. They're called hydrophiliac, and they're a great way of hydrating yourself. Actually, I use kind of chia seed-based energy gels when I run. So there's lots of uses for them. So check out chia seeds, again, incredibly healthy. You can put them in smoothies, sprinkle them on your cereal, sprinkle them onto salads. If you're having a boring old salad, try, as well as grating veg into the salad and spiralizing, that's another great way of getting veggies inside of you. Try sprinkling seeds, chia seeds, chopped nuts, olive oil, salt and pepper. Put that into your salad, and all of a sudden you turn a fairly boring salad into something really, really exciting and interesting with a nice bit of crunch in there from the seeds, and an easy way of getting extra protein, extra fats into your diet. So that's number 4. Number 5 is you're going to love this one because it's free and it's water. Okay, so I'm not completely free. You've got to pay your water bills and all the rest of it, but it's there. It's in the tap. Drink up. Have a glass of water with you the whole time. It really does make a difference on a few levels. It wasn't just a highlight the point. That was because I was actually thirsty. But when you're dehydrated, your body actually finds it harder to burn fat. It's harder to metabolize and create energy, or store the energy into useful work. When you are dehydrated, your cells can't function the way they're supposed to function. Your cell linings, the walls become dehydrated. The cells themselves and the fluid that surrounds the cells, that starts to get dehydrated. That's also a reason why if you suddenly drank 3 liters a day more than you normally drink, then guess what's going to happen? You're going to be going to the toilet all the time, and you're going to think, well, forget about that. I'm not doing that. Because what happens is you can't rehydrate the body that quickly. You need to do it over a period of a few days. So just gradually increase the amount of water that you drink. But also when you're properly hydrated, often when you feel hungry, it's because you're thirsty. You've probably heard that before, but it's true. Okay, if you drink a big old pint of water, I get up in the morning, I have a pint of water, then I have a pint of a greens, like a greens powder, a greens drink, and once I've done that, I'll go and train, I'll go to the pool, I'll go and teach boot camps, I'll go and do whatever for an hour or two, and then I'll come back and eat. Now, if I hadn't had anything to drink, then I'd be feeling pretty peckish. But as soon as I've had that, it's like, okay, my tummy's got something, even though there's no energy in that, there's no calories, there's nothing really filling, but I've had some water and it carries me through. So sometimes it's worthwhile just having a glass of water when you're feeling hungry, and then giving it a half an hour, and then asking yourself the question, am I still hungry? And if you are, then maybe go and eat. But otherwise, you might find that that's enough to kind of carry you through to the next proper meal. So they are my 5. We talk about omega-3 fish oils, we talk leafy green veggies, coconut oil, chia seeds, and good old-fashioned water. Okay, so that's some kind of get your teeth stuck into content there for you as well. I want to finish off this evening's webinar. First of all, actually, another call out. Questions, chuck them in there. I can see we've had a few already, which is good. I haven't read them yet, but I'm going to get stuck into them in just a moment once I finish the last piece. Because I want to kind of finish this off by urging you to think about what your summer body really means. Now, when Lucy first asked me to come and do a webinar with you, and we thought, well, it's the kind of perfect time. People are thinking about summer and holidays and getting in shape. I figured I need to kind of come up with some sort of attention-grabbing headline. And I always feel like I've sort of oversold it because the whole idea of summer body, it's kind of conjures up illusions that may not actually be what you really want. So if you think about summer body, you might think about kind of laying around in bikinis or swimming shorts on beaches and kind of a tan and a perfect body. Think, well, that's what I want. But actually to get that from wherever you are right now, I'm not saying that it's impossible, but the amount of effort and sacrifice it would take to get to that this point, whatever that image has come from, sometimes it can actually make you desperately unhappy trying to achieve that. So what we need to do is to get kind of a bit more realistic and defined with what we mean by summer body. What is it that you really want? And here's the key word, to feel. I mentioned this right at the start. What is it that you want to feel? Is it that you want to feel confident? Is it that you want to feel happy? Is it that you want to feel respected? What is the most important feeling? You don't have to answer these questions to me, but I want you to answer them for yourself. What is it that you really want? Not to achieve. Nobody does anything because they want to achieve something. It's always because of a feeling that it gives you. Every action you have is driven by emotion at some level. So there'll be some way your brain is saying, I want to feel like this. And sometimes the instant gratification monkey kicks in, and we want to feel a certain way, and we want to feel it now. And so we do the thing that might not be in our best interests long term. But ultimately, it still comes down to a feeling. Okay, so get some clarity on what it means to you to have a summer body, or just a healthy body, and how you actually want to feel. Because then the vision of that reality might be very different to what you previously thought. And I think once you've got this clear-cut vision and this real clear understanding of what you want to achieve physically and emotionally, then it can make things a lot less stressful. Taking it back to the title of the presentation tonight, the webinar tonight, how to take the stress out of getting in shape for the summer holidays. You don't want stress in your life, right? I think we can all agree with that. Nobody goes out thinking, you know what, I want to get really stressed and angry. We don't want that. We want to be, we want to achieve results, but we want to do it in a way that isn't going to stress us out. And that's the I guess the holy grail of all of this, is finding a way that we can get that balance. It's not to say that stress is a bad thing, because it's not. And actually, resilience, which is your ability to handle stress, that comes from being stressed and then taking steps to kind of not even alleviate, taking steps to grow positively from that stress. So things like meditation, sleep, nutrition, exercise, these are all really, really important things in our resilience and stress combating. But when it comes to these goals that we set ourselves, think about what they really mean to you, because sometimes they're just arbitrary. They're just headlines. I want to get in shape. Well, that doesn't really mean anything. You can't get up in the morning and say, right, I'm going to get in shape today. You can't do getting in shape. You can do having healthy breakfast. You can do taking fish oils. You can do going for a run. You can do going to a gym class. You can do those things. You can tick them off your lead indicators list. But you can't do getting in shape. You can't do losing 3 pounds today. They're not things you can do. They're outcomes. And that's the biggest, that's what I want to leave you with today before I move over to the questions, is what is it that you want to achieve, and what do you need to do to achieve that? Actions versus results. Hopefully, if you get the actions right, you'll get the results that you want as well, and it's all happy days. But focus on the process. Okay. Whew, Lucy, are you still there?
Yes, I am. Thank you. Yeah, before we go on to the questions, I just wanted to say that what you said about accepting that we need to do things differently is like, it's such an obvious thing, but it's such a difficult thing to accept. You know, we kind of want the results, but we're not prepared to make those kind of minute changes to our daily routine, and it's those little things that really, really make the difference. But getting your head around that is really hard, and I've kind of had a battle for years trying to get that, you know, get into that place, and I think I've finally done it, and it is starting to have an effect. You know, I have noticed the difference in the last couple of years, but it's yeah, we're very habitual, aren't we? It's quite difficult to make those little changes.
And also, kind of on that as well, you need to sort of tune into your body a little more as well, and you know, that's what you've done over the last few years. You have tuned in, and you sort of listen to the signs. So it's okay, you don't have to be completely on it the whole time. You don't have to be, you know, some kind of machine where you're training hard and you're eating clean, healthy food all the time. You don't have to be like that. But there'll be times where you sort of fall off the wagon a little bit with your eating and with your exercise. You're not kind of going to the gym as much or running, and you'll get that sense that, you know what, I need to kind of get back into it. And going back to what I said about having these lead indicators, if you've got this, it's like your own personal results recipe. Like, you figure out what works for you, because actually my program isn't going to work for everybody. Bits of it might, but the whole thing, no, it's not going to work for. Nobody can say that. You find the bits that work for you, and you write them down. You make that list, and then whenever you find that you're starting to get slack a little bit again, you take out that piece of paper. You've written those results, those things to do, the practical things to do, those habits that you know work, and then you just think, this is what I need to do. You don't need to go out looking for the new diet or the new way of doing things, a new workout class that's guaranteed to kind of get your results. You do what you know works for you. At least it's a starting point. Things might have changed slightly since the last time you did it, but in general, it's a pretty good starting point.
Yeah, no, it's definitely true. And also, I noticed somebody put on the in the text box that she likes the idea of adding instead of taking away. And just one more point before we've gone to the questions, but that's totally my thinking behind Soberistas. It was like this idea of one day at a time and giving up alcohol and gritting your teeth, and it's just an absolute recipe for disaster, because you just look around you and see everybody drinking, and then you just want to drink. And I've always focused on what I've gained from not drinking, right from years ago. That's what I've really focused my energy into, and it's like, running, feeling better, looking better, having more money, being a better parent, just being a nicer person, knowing myself more, all those things. It's those things that I focused on, and so much so that the drinks just, it's not relevant to me anymore. I just don't think about it. And it's totally the same thing with weight loss and healthy eating. You start focusing on all the good things that you're getting instead, and forget about all the crap that you're taking out, and it really works.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I mean my whole online program is called INAPS. It's not about the scales, because actually as soon as you shift the focus away from thinking, I've got to lose weight, all you think about is the weight, and you're focusing on measuring it via this arbitrary number on a set of scales can dictate how you feel. Where actually, if you think about when you are, and everybody listening to this webinar this evening or the recording, has probably made an effort to kind of eat healthy and exercise at some point in their life. And actually, if you think back to that time, however recently it was, there were probably times when you were eating really well and you just felt pretty good. And you felt energized. You felt your skin was clear or your hair was glossy, and you felt like you were just walking taller and you just felt good. You might not have been in the shape you wanted to be in. You might not have had the number on the scales that you wanted, but actually you felt pretty good. Like this energy was there. Sleeping better, less stress, fewer kind of spikes in mood, and these are the real benefits. Kind of just being happier, and if you can focus on those things, adding those really positive benefits in, then life's just so much easier. You're focusing on that, and that helps you do the processes that are going to keep that rolling. It's the same with drinking, like you said. You focus on the good things rather than what you can't have, because like who says you can do whatever you want? You're a grown up, but you focus on the good stuff. That's definitely my philosophy.
Yeah. Okay, so Jane's first question. Jane's written, my main problem is feeling tired all of the time. I have 2 small children and I'm doing an intensive teacher training course. In reality, I am very tired a lot of the time, which leads me to drinking alcohol and bad eating habits. How do I deal with this and stay in control even when tired?
Well, I think the first thing actually is to take the pressure off yourself. And often when we're thinking about getting in shape and we're thinking about exercise in particular, there's the belief that we should be doing a certain amount of exercise if we're going to get results. And that might be, I've got to go to the gym 5 days a week or even 3 days a week to be kind of realistic for an hour at a time. Now that means driving to the gym, getting a gym bag organized, driving there. That could be 2 hours out of your day when you're already very busy and stressed. You've got 2 children. I mean, I know what that's like. I've got 3 young children of my own, and it's not easy. So I said at the beginning, all this work doing in the house, 3 kids, I'm training for an Ironman. Now you've got to fit things in, but you don't have to. Sorry, the Ironman thing is irrelevant because actually you don't have to do lots and lots and lots of high intensity, high volume exercise to get results. So your problem at the moment, Jane, as you said, is that you're feeling very tired. And when you get tired, what happens is you start making different decisions. I'd actually really recommend reading the book, The Chimp Paradox. If you haven't read it all already, perhaps type in if you have read it or not. But it's an incredibly powerful book to understand how your brain works. Because when you get tired, the chimp that lives in your mind, it's actually the mammalian part of your brain from a kind of an evolutionary perspective. The chimp starts sort of getting agitated and running around and it starts telling you to do things. In this case, have a drink, because you're going to feel better if you have a drink. And it takes control. And even though the human brain, yourself, your rational, logical thinking self, says, no, I'm not drinking. I've stopped drinking. The chimp's taken over and it's now controlling your body. And so you just have a drink or you eat all the things or whatever it might be that your vice happens to be. So the thing is to break that cycle somehow and trying to include some of these things, because let's face it, you've got young kids, you can't guarantee getting 8 hours of sleep a night. You just can't do it. Best one in the world, you can get to bed early, but you can't guarantee they're not going to get woken up in the middle of the night. That still happens to me. But if the things you're doing, like drinking coffee, for example, that's a real easy one to start. Well, it's not an easy one, actually, it's really bloody hard, but it's a simple idea. So if you're drinking caffeine at any time of the day, I would recommend stopping that straight off. Okay, go through, take the hit. It's going to be tough for a few days. You're going to probably get headaches. You're going to feel a bit grouchy, but get through that fog, get out the other side, and I can guarantee that you will feel better. It might not solve all your problems, but you will feel better, because coffee, caffeine, caffeinated drinks, colas, and so on, they will raise your blood sugar. They will also raise your cortisol levels. And if you're not getting enough sleep, you're not dropping them down. The other thing is, I find this with coffee as well. If I drink too much coffee in the morning, then I don't get the drivers. I'm not tired until 11 o'clock at night, and so I'm missing an hour of my sleep. I can't go to bed because I don't feel tired. I watch TV or I'm reading a book. I'm really getting into it, but I'm not tired because I've been drinking coffee. So it kind of gives you that false sense. But all caffeine does is it blocks the receptors. It doesn't actually give you energy. It stops you feeling tired, but you're still getting tired. So that would be two things there. Read the chimp paradox, because it'll help you understand actually from neuroscience perspective what's happening. And the second thing is look at what stimulants you're taking on board in terms of caffeine, and that'll help break the cycle, but also take the pressure off yourself, Jane. That's the other thing I'll say. What else have we got?
Good guys. Anne's asked a question about supplement. Is it possible to take too many supplements? She's taking loads for years with everything in her liver. I have emailed Anne before this webinar, and she's going to. We're also going to ask Dr. Julia this question, but you might have an opinion on it as well. She has included a list of the supplements she's taking: vitamin B complex, vitamin C, low release, vitamin D.
Yeah.
Zinc.
Okay, so it is possible to take too many supplements, in the sense that it can be very expensive and unsustainable, and actually it depends on what you're taking them for in the first place. And you said that because you wanted to kind of undo or compensate rather for years and years of abusing your poor old liver. Well, the great news is that actually your body is incredibly effective at regenerating and at sort of detoxing. We talk about kind of going on a detox and taking detox supplements. That can accelerate the process. It can help. And things like milk thistle is brilliant for the liver. Magnesium is a great one. Vitamin D is a really good one to have. The ones I recommend: omega-3, vitamin D, magnesium. You're already taking all of them and some more. None of them are kind of flagging up any issues, as far as I'm concerned. The doctor might have other things to say on that front. But the point is that nothing is going to outsmart a good diet. Okay, so if you're still not eating a healthy diet, then the supplements aren't going to be doing much good, really. So go with that. I mean, that whole point. That listen to the title. Supplements. They're supposed to supplement your diet, not replace or obviously you're trying to compensate for the past, and they will help to some extent, but the best thing you can do is to get on to really just clean up your diet as much as possible. Obviously no alcohol, which is just horrendous for the liver, but try and avoid those inflammatory foods that we talked about as well, like lots of sugar. Try to cut sugar out your diet. It's not easy to do. Again, you have to work at it, but it's doable, and lots of people do that. So cut sugar out, reduce or cut out wheat and gluten-containing foods, and reduce and eliminate processed foods. If you just do those things there, then that's going to really have an impact. And then the supplements are going to be allowed to work, and they're going to help. But yeah, I think your main question was: is it possible to take too many supplements? Then you've got to think: is it sustainable to keep doing that every single morning for the rest of your life? And actually, which ones are working, which ones aren't? And it's difficult to do the test there. Like, are you taking all those supplements when actually only one of them is really having an effect? You don't know until you've done some testing. So it might be worthwhile stopping them completely and then testing them. Well, how do you know if they're working? Are you doing tests on kind of liver function before and after? So there's lots of unknowns in there, Anne. But the answer to the question is no. You're not probably taking too many supplements, other than from a sort of the perspective of they're not necessarily necessary. So hopefully that sort of answered the question there.
Yeah, and Anna, I will pass that question on to Julia as well, and she'll answer that at the beginning of April on Soberistas. Okay, Pip B has asked, can you recommend 5 foods not to eat?
Yeah, I just saw that. Yeah, very easy. Pasties, chips, cheesecake. Okay. In all seriousness, if you think about the simple, not food groups, but in the elimination diet, are clean concepts of eating. If you eliminate sugar, processed foods, gluten, wheat, which is the main source of gluten in our diets, alcohol, dairy, caffeine. If you did those 6 things, and actually caffeine is not necessarily something to eliminate, it's definitely something to cut down on if you're trying to rebalance hormones. But let's say you went for the first 3. Let's say you went with sugar, wheat, and processed foods. If you eliminate those 3 things, that first of all makes your shopping trip real easy once you've got to know the food labels, because it takes out 80% in the supermarket if you eliminated those 3 types of food, or things that will be ingredients in food. I mean, seriously, there's hardly anything left after that point. Even in the free from aisle, right? Yesterday I was in the free from aisle in Waitrose in Tame, and I thought, I've seen these things in there before, but I thought I'm going to take a photograph and post it on one of my groups. And the thing is, with the free from aisle, you sort of expect it to be healthy. You assume it's healthy because it's free from. That's where the healthy people hang out. So you go there, you look at foods, and these particular foods, they come in nice green packaging, and you see the words. Actually, they're called the good stuff, Goody Good Stuff, I think it was the brand. And you look at them, and they immediately say these are gluten free. Okay, brilliant, because that's healthy. I think they might even have been organic. They were definitely free of artificial colours and flavourings. They were lactose free. Handy if you suffer from lactose intolerance. And I looked further, and actually, these things that seemingly so healthy, nowhere did it say that they were healthy. These things, do you know what they were? They were cola bottles. Cola bottles, sweets, like you would buy in penny sweet shops, like way back. That's what they were in what we regard as the healthy aisle of the supermarket. We're in such a minefield at the moment of what's healthy, what's not healthy. If you just have those three things, those three filters, if you look at the ingredients, it's a bit hard with sugar because it might say maltodextrin, it might say maltodol, it might say honey, sweeteners, it might have all sorts of different things, but basically they're sugars. Anything with O's at the end, glucose, maltose, dextrose, they're all sugars. But if you eliminate sugar, wheat, and processed foods, then you're pretty much eating a good diet there if you were to do just those three things. So hopefully that's given you a little bit of an insight into the 5 foods to avoid eating, Pip B.
Yeah. Okay. Jane, who asked a question about being tired, has also added that she's got a stubborn belly fat from having children. Is there anything specific she can do for that?
Yeah, so belly fat, again, is normally indicative of, well, there are several reasons, but one of the most common reasons is, again, an increase in cortisol. Cortisol is like, we need it because it's what delivers that kind of fight or flight response. Adrenaline and cortisol, they work together, but it triggers the fat cells of the abdominal region more than any other cell in the body. And it basically says, look, I'm here, fill me up. And so the sugars that are in the bloodstream, because they've just been released thanks to this action of cortisol, that's what it does. It gets sugars into the bloodstream, ready for the energy, and it then sends them straight to the fat cells. So high levels of cortisol, that's why a lot of guys, you see a lot of guys, and they're kind of fairly skinny legs, kind of skinny up here, and they've got big beer bellies, and it's because of these high cortisol levels, or one of the reasons is that kind of high level of cortisol. A good reference point, actually, that I recommend you have a look at is Marilyn Glenville, Fat Around the Middle. It's a really good book. Marilyn's a friend of mine, but she's one of the world's top speakers, authors, thinkers, and practitioners in certainly women's health, but in particular the stubbornness of fat around the middle. So if you check her book out, then it gives you some very practical things that you can do. And again, they generally come down to hormonal balancing again. So that's unfortunately there's no one exercise. I think that's normally into something that I can't think of the word for right now, but what's the one exercise I can do that's going to burn this spare body fat? There isn't something. You can't just do loads of sit-ups or low ab exercises. It's not going to work. In fact, don't do that. It can do more harm than good. In my programs, I never use sit-ups in my programs because they just don't work, and they can cause more harm than good. But if you're trying to kind of burn fat from that area, then you've got to look at beyond diet, beyond exercise. You've got to look hormonal, and Marilyn Glenville is the person I'd recommend to check that out.
Oh, that's helpful. I'll look at that too. We've got a bit of baby belly fat going on as well. Right. One more question, I think. Amanda, what about vitamin B? Which I know it's something like it is bandied about on Soberistas a lot. When people have been drinking a lot, they have a depletion of vitamin B. Is it advisable to take a vitamin B complex?
Well, vitamin B is one of the main vitamins for releasing energy, or kind of metabolizing and carrying energy to where it's needed. So yes, it is important. I think, again, it comes back to, if you just if you imagine if you're trying to sort of clean up your body and detox your body, if you're still putting crap in at the top end, then it doesn't matter how much you try to sort of detox, it's still coming in. Whereas if you stop, then the body will naturally do it. It will naturally rebalance. It can take a little while, it can take a few days, and it can be quite uncomfortable. You can get headaches, you can feel pretty crap for a few days actually whilst you're going through this transitional period. But once you're out the other side, then your body it just starts to function a little more optimally. So you don't necessarily have to supplement with B vitamins, but if you know that you have a real kind of energy deficiency, then it can be worthwhile going in and taking a supplement. But again, test it. Test out a B complex. Does it help? Does it help make you feel any better? Take it for a month. Give it a fair shot. Don't change anything else. But my first protocol will always be to clean your diet up first. So allow your body to do its job first, and then you can start looking at these supplements. The reason I recommend omega-3, magnesium, and vitamin D3 is because they're the ones that most people really, really benefit from. So if you just took those as your baseline, you can add other ones in. Vitamin C, brilliant supplement with vitamin C, really good for the immune system and all sorts of other functions. But you don't have to be taking that and vitamin B and milk thistle and all the other. You go to a health food store, there's shelves and shelves and shelves full of supplements. Of course, no one's expected to take all of those things, even though they could all potentially be good for you.
Okay, thank you very much. That's loads to go at. If anybody wants the details there that George mentioned,
yes.
Just email me and George.
I'll tell you what the website is though. It's pretty simple. It's inats, inats.club/Soberistas. So yeah, I sent it to you earlier, Lucy. You can circulate that clubs, Soberistas, because I'm going to be running this program after Easter, and so it just means I can tell you a little bit more about it if you're interested in following it and having me help you make some changes to your life.
Yeah, and if when we put this webinar on the webinars page, we'll just add the website details there as well, so people can contact you if they want any of those specifics, if you missed them. And I think that's it. So thank you very much, George.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And thanks a lot for joining us, everybody who watched tonight, and see you again next month. Thank you. Bye.